Welcome to Human Monsters and part 7 of the Chad and Lori Dybell murders. The next witness called was retired Police Sergeant David Stubs. Rob Wood began questioning. It was on November 1st, 2019, when Stubs first encountered the case. It was when Arizona police were investigating the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux. He was one of the officers who had the Jeep under surveillance. He saw Chad and Lori depart from her apartment and get into a blue Subaru with Arizona license plates. He followed the car to see if they would lead him to the Jeep. They drove to Idaho Falls and visited Hobby Lobby. Chad and Lori were all smiles and laughter. She rested her head on his shoulder. On November 26, 2019, Kay Woodcock submitted a request for a welfare check to be conducted on JJ. She had not heard from him in a long time. Stubs and another officer went to Lori's apartment and tried to contact her. He and Lieutenant Ball went to Lori's apartment to find JJ. She answered the door, and they told her they were inquiring about her son, as his grandmother was concerned about him after the long period without contact. Body cam footage of this encounter was entered into evidence. In the recording, Lori told them Alex was in the apartment with her and JJ was in Arizona in the custody of her friend, Melanie Gibb. She said Chad Dybell was her brother's friend. Stubbs told her the officers got a negative vibe earlier that day because nobody seemed to know anything about JJ. She said it was because she had to change a dress frequently due to the fact that one of her brothers was trying to murder her so he could collect a life insurance payout. She said her husband died early that year, and since that time, Kay had been trying to obtain custody of JJ, who was autistic and had ADHD. She stated her intentions to move back to Arizona as she had tried enrolling JJ in school in Idaho and he struggled there. She told the officers Kay received a $1 million payout and in life insurance subsequent to Lori's husband's death, and she received nothing with which to raise her children. She said Kay would try to sue her for custody of JJ. She said she withheld the locations of her children for those reasons. She identified as a good person. She said she raised all her kids and did nothing wrong, but everyone was causing problems for her at that time. She said they moved up in September. Her daughter enrolled in BYUI, and she lived with Lori. She described the situation overall as a nightmare, and she was going back to Arizona so she could put JJ back in a special needs school. She said the school he attended before was too hard on him, with the principal having to drag him out of the car to get him inside the campus. She claimed Kay was documenting everything in her effort to build a case against her so she could assume custody. Stubbs said he was only concerned about JJ. They were confused because two men outside said they knew nothing about JJ. Lori said one was her brother Alex and the other was his friend Chad. The lieutenant asked if Chad's wife passed away recently. Lori nodded. He asked her if he had 2 daughters, and she said he had many children. She said people were constantly knocking on her door looking for her. She didn't want to be found. She came across emails sent between her husband and brother, and they were in the planning stages of managing their current life situation with all the relocations. Her husband found out where she lived, so she had to move again. She intended to move in with Melanie Gibb, so nobody could find her. The video ended. Stubbs and the other officers had numerous concerns after speaking with Lori. They never found any evidence that her brother Adam had been to her apartment. They found no evidence that Kay was trying to get custody of JJ. They came across no evidence that Tylee was enrolled in BYUI. JJ had never been enrolled in a special needs school in Arizona. Melanie was not situated in Arizona at that time. She lived in Utah. Lori said Chad was her brother's friend. The officers knew they had already married on November 5th in Hawaii. Another concern was Alex's state of mind, given the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux. There was a shadow moving from the top of the staircase, making him anxious about what Alex's intentions may have been that were not immediately apparent. Stubbs returned to the apartment shortly thereafter once he was unable to reach Melanie Gibb. They showed the body cam footage to the court. He told Lori they couldn't reach Melanie. Lori said it was because they were off to the movies to see Frozen 2. She laughed and joked with the officers. They never did reach Melanie or find JJ that day. In the morning, a warrant was issued to search all three apartments: Lori's, Alex's, and Melanie Boudreaux's. The court broke for the day. May 3rd, 2024. David Stubbs was back on the stand. The discussion concerning the search of the three apartments resumed. Stubbs's body cam footage was played for the court. The first footage displayed his tour through Lori's apartment. There were keys left on a bench. The pantry was stocked. Personal items were left around. Guns were stored in the garage. They suspected the occupants had deserted the domicile because of the emptied wardrobes they found. One of the wardrobes was being used to store 2 samurai swords. More body cam footage was played. There was a car in the garage and clothes in the wardrobes, so someone was living in this unit. They found a file with Brandon Boudreaux's credit cards and his driver's license, which the detective found strange considering they had divorced. The search was escalated to investigate Tylee Ryan. Stubbs said 20 search warrants were requested for this case. Among them, phone records would be investigated. Many of the warrants were issued before the children's remains were located. Phone numbers, email addresses, and credit cards connected to the Gmail account were also subjected to scrutiny. Nobody returned to the apartment after November 27th. The landlords cleaned the apartments and gave the officers 2 electronic devices they found. The officers were still trying to find the children. They came across some phone records in a post office box that listed the numbers for Lori, Tylee, Alex, and Charles. Nobody was able to get in touch with Lori or Chad. Eventually, their devices were tracked to Kauai, Hawaii. Detectives traveled to Hawaii and tracked down Lori and Chad. The officers searched their apartment and vehicle. 10 electronic devices were pulled from their car. There was also a notebook containing email accounts and passwords. Melanie Boudreaux's phone was searched. They still could not fill the blanks when it came to the location of the children. They would have to wait until June 9th, 2020. The officers conducted searches on Chad's phone records. He conducted a search on wind direction on September 8th, 2019. They speculated that Tylee was immolated and buried in the fire pit on Chad's property on September 9th. They found wedding photos from his wedding to Lori. They also found that many photos of Tammy were deleted, including their courtship and the births of their children. The court adjourned for a mid-morning recess. The questioning of Detective Stubbs resumed. Numerous photos were entered into evidence. Among them was an image of Chad and Lori on the beach during their wedding. Another had Lori and Chad posing in front of a Mormon temple in Hawaii. No further questions. John Pryor cross-examined. At one point, Stubbs said he didn't examine the phone records of Melanie Gibb and David Warwick. Melanie Gibbs and David Warwick were staying in Lori's apartment. Stubbs said he was aware of this, but Gibbs cooperated and was never designated a suspect. Pryor asked him if in all the emails he read that were written by Chad Dybell, there were any messages urging the recipient to embark on the murders of the children. Stubbs did not encounter such data. No further questions. Woods redirected. He asked if Melanie Gibbs's or David Warwick's phones appeared on the geofence. Stubbs said they did not. He asked if their children were found on Chad's property. Stubbs said this was not the case. No further questions. The next witness to be called was FBI Special Agent Steve Daniels. He was the senior team leader in the search for Tylee and JJ. He arrived at Chad's property at about 7 a.m. on June 9, 2020. Two members of his team were assigned the task of assessing the fire pit. They were also keen on investigating the pet cemetery because of a text message considered notable because it contained a reference to a burial. Many phone calls exchanged in September 2019 showed that people had been on the property. Wood contributed several photos to evidence. The dates they were taken were June 9th and 10th, 2020. The investigators measured the property using a laser and a scanner, and they assembled voluminous data. A slide of this data was entered into evidence and displayed. First, an image of the city of Rexburg appeared, with some areas highlighted from above. Images showing the fire pit and pet cemetery in Chad Daybell's property were shown. Additional aerial images were displayed. There were close-up pictures of the fire pit. That area was processed layer by layer. Among the materials seen were bone fragments, remnants of fabric, among other items, including a silver charm that had belonged to Tylee. Additional close-ups of the charm were shown. A photo of Tylee wearing the jewelry was displayed. More images of the property, including the pet cemetery, were displayed. Dog and cat remains were removed. A backhoe was brought in for the deep digging. The site of Tylee's burial was just a little north of that location. Due to their grisly and graphic nature, it was decided that no more images of Tylee's remains would be shown to the public. The next photo displayed one of two vertebrae found on the property. The smell of decomposing human flesh wafted throughout the site. It was about that time that JJ's remains were dug up. Use of the backhoe was suspended in favor of hand tools. The next image to be displayed was charred flesh. They weren't entirely sure the flesh was human at the time, but they persisted digging with the hand tools. The next images displayed for the court consisted of pieces of Tylee's anatomy. These were the first segments they could recognize as having originated from a human being. A large piece of white bone was seen in the photo. The crew called it a day. On June 10th, more remains were unearthed. The next image shown to the court was charred pink flesh. At one point, they discovered a solid substance that resisted excavation. Suddenly, a melted mass of remains was found. The next image displayed to the court was a melted green bucket and Tylee's skull. The investigators dug deeper, this time with the backhoe, since the hand tools yielded no more findings. Everything had been put into a body bag. The animal remains were reburied, and the area was filled with soil. The next photo showed the garage on Chad's property. The investigators were interested to see if there were tools that might have been used to bury people. A pickaxe was festooned with debris on the blade, and there were streaks of black char markings. Other tools included 2 shovels, clippers, an axe, a saw, and other tools that could be used on human remains for the purpose of disposal. The tools were turned over to the Rexburg Police Department. Additional physical evidence was displayed in court, a shovel and pickaxe covered in dirt and debris. The court broke for the day. May 6th, 2024. Agent Steve Daniels testified once again. Wood resumed questioning. Aerial images of the pond and tree area by the spot where JJ's remains were discovered were shown. The investigators were particularly intrigued by an area that appeared to be deliberately raised in stature. They dug through, sifting through it layer by layer. They encountered stones and cement blocks along the way as they dug through the soil. They found 2 wooden planks under the stones. This indicated that whoever buried the body made an effort to cut through tree roots. The next image shown was of black plastic. It felt to the investigators like a human head or skull wrapped in plastic. Daniels cut the black plastic and found white plastic underneath. He cut the white plastic, revealing human hair. They were sure at this point that they had located JJ's remains. The team continued excavating, determined to uncover the feet area. As they uncovered the rest of the remains, a large strip of duct tape appeared on the wrapping. The next image displayed showed a large strip of duct tape wrapped around the body. Once the area was excavated, a backhoe was brought in. This was done in case Tylee's remains were buried in the same location. Nothing else was found. No further questions. Pryor cross-examined. Pryor asked him if cadaver dogs and luminol were used in these searches. Daniels couldn't recall. Pryor asked him if it was unusual for him to forget such details. Daniels said it was not. He had done multiple searches. When he was asked about the structure attached to Chad's garage, he said there was a mattress and a comforter in the room, suggesting someone had been using it as sleeping quarters. Daniels also could not recall how many officers were staging at the Salem Church on the morning of June 9th, 2020. He was sure there were at least 50 officers on the scene over the span of 2 days. He believed Rob Wood was there, but he didn't know who he was then. Wood had a redirect. He mentioned the tools, and Daniels said the tools were collected and submitted to the Rexburg Police Department. Wood asked him if he remembered another 2 prosecutors at the planning meeting before the warrant was executed at the Dybell property, along with him. Daniel had no recollection to speak of since he didn't know them. The information regarding the telephone ping provided an area to focus on initially. The depression that was made in the ground attracted their attention. No further questions. The court took a mid-morning break. The next witness called was Melanie Palowski, formerly Boudreaux. She was Lori Vallow's niece. She described to the court how she came to meet Chad. Chad would send her messages through Lori. She also asked Chad for guidance and advice. He became such a paternal figure in her life that she developed a habit of addressing him as Dad. She recalled his teachings about light and dark, which were imparted to her from both Lori and Chad. Everything she learned from Lori was passed down from Chad. According to her, Chad could always tell if someone was light or dark. He wore a pendant that helped him download the relevant information, though it wasn't always necessary. From them, she learned to raise your right hand to cast out the presence of a dark spirit or demonic entity. She remembered participating in a casting on Charles Vallow. Charles was not there physically. Nobody lays their hands on the subject during the casting. She was told JJ was dark. She didn't receive any specific details. All she knew was that they told her he was affected by some kind of dark energy. Chad designated Tylee as dark, and Melanie presumed it was Chad who deemed JJ dark. She believed that Chad and Lori's beliefs pertaining to castings originated from Julie Rowe's teachings. Unlike hers, their teachings continued to evolve. They came to add their own ideas to the mix. She found out about the death of Charles Vallow from her uncle, Adam Cox. He told her Charles was murdered. Lori told her Alex got into a fight with Charles and shot him. Alex's explanation was that Charles became angry and they fought. A baseball bat was used. Alex wound up shooting Charles in self-defense. Lori told Melanie she was moving to Rexburg to seek asylum and be protected. Alex also went into hiding. By the end of September 2019, Melanie visited Lori. Tylee and JJ were not present. Lori told her Tylee was staying with a friend at BYU and doing whatever she wanted. She said JJ was in the care of a nanny. Melanie couldn't recall if she saw Chad during the visit. In October, she went with Lori to Missouri. The children were not with them. She accompanied Lori to Hawaii. The children did not join them. Tammy Dybell passed away while they were in Hawaii, which apparently came as a surprise to Lori. Lori went back to Idaho shortly thereafter. Alex was supposed to go with them to Hawaii, but Lori told Melanie Chad needed his help with something. Chad was intended to be the leader of a church of the firstborn and to assist with the process of the second coming. Lori told Melanie that if a person is possessed, they were known in their circle as zombies. She told her that if a body is dark, it would eventually die. Chad and Lori instructed Melanie not to talk to law enforcement as they considered them corrupt and dark. In November 2019, Melanie moved to Rexburg. She soon found out the children were declared missing. Chad told her Madison County wasn't safe and that she should move. Chad told her Brandon attached a tracking device to her car, which turned out to be true. No further questions. Pryor cross-examined. He asked her about the trip to Hawaii. She couldn't recall exact dates, but it took place over a week or 10 days in October. In 2018, Melanie lived 10 minutes away from Lori. She was introduced to Melanie Gibb near the end of 2018 at a Preparing a People event that featured a talk by Chad. She said some of the ideas she encountered at the conference were LDS based, but she didn't think they were inconsistent with the LDS Church. The preparing a people teachings were about second comings and apocalyptic scenarios. Most of what she learned about Chad came secondhand from Lori. The usage of the term zombie came from Lori. Melanie wasn't sure if she ever heard Chad use it. No further questions. Blake redirected. Melanie said she believed the teachings and concepts came from both Lori and Chad. She had been told Charles was categorized as dark and he was no longer alive. JJ was also considered dark by their metric, and he, too, was no longer in the pink. Tylee was labeled as dark, and the expiration of her mortality had long since transpired. No further questions. The next witness called was Ian Palowski. He is Melanie's husband. Blake began questioning him. He first met Lori and Chad on November 23rd, 2019. He met Alex Cox on the night of his wedding to Melanie on November 30th that year. At a later date, there was a Zoom call placed to Lori and Chad. The purpose was to ask their permission to marry Melanie. They gave their blessing. They also gave him a religious blessing, which struck him as unorthodox. He told Melanie he thought it was strange. He never met Tylee or JJ. Melanie shared with him many of the teachings she learned from Lori and Chad. Much of this information was conveyed to him on the night of their wedding. She confessed to him that she was scared of Lori and Chad and was concerned about Tylee and JJ's whereabouts. The next morning, Ian's daughter hid from him for a few minutes as a prank. It aroused no spirit of merriment. He feared that his daughter was missing and that a similar fate had befallen his other children, his ex-wife, and Lori's children. Following this, he reached out to law enforcement and they asked for his assistance. He consented to record his conversations with Lori and Chad, which he did. This occurred in early December 2019. He found out through another phone call that Alex was dead. People were dropping like flies around Lori and Chad Dybell, and his instincts told him it couldn't have been coincidental. Ian had been living in an apartment across the street from Melanie. They moved in together soon after they became an item. Chad told him they needed to leave Rexburg ASAP to give law enforcement the slip. Blake entered the recordings into evidence. There were a total of 87 minutes in length, but only a select few segments were played for the court. In the first clip, Alex and Zulema were talking about Dave. Alex: the reason Dave wasn't moving forward in their relationship is because he never got a confirmation of zombies. He doesn't believe she was ordained and is not buying anything. Gibbs said she talked herself into thinking the only way to clear her conscience was to call the police and tell them what she knew, which is that she never had JJ. She asked us, and you and I told her that she was better off not knowing. Melanie: I said that? Alex: that's what she said. Melanie: she threw me under the bus for nothing? Alex: yes. Walking in the park. Zulema: no, it's not just you. It's just throwing everybody under the bus. Alex: everybody under the bus because she thought the cops, that was going to clear her conscience with God. Lori and Chad joined the conversation. Melanie began to cry and expressed how much she missed Lori. Lori: I miss you too. Chad: It's good to hear your voice. Lori, here's your daddy. Chad, we're alive. Ian, she'll be able to hear you when she stops sobbing. Melanie, oh, I miss you guys. Lori, did we lose my baby? Melanie, I'm here. I was in the ER tonight. The recording stopped. Another segment of the recording began. Melanie was referencing spiritual attacks from Satan. Another segment was played, which featured Lori and Melanie discussing the so-called bad detectives. The detectives in question were Hope and Hermosillo. The next segment consisted of Lori and Melanie talking about how they didn't trust Melanie Gibb and Dave, and that Melanie threw them under the bus. Lori characterized Dave as being the fundamental problem and that Melanie lost her place in their circle. She said Melanie had all the knowledge and would be made accountable for it, though she didn't specify how this would transpire. She said Melanie was on the verge of going to the police and telling the truth after having lied. Lori didn't consider that anybody who still remained in their group would suffer any consequences of such actions. The next segment contained a recording of Melanie saying she wanted to stay in the apartment. Chad, my only worry is that they're still watching you. Melanie, well, yeah, they are. And they're probably tracking my phone and listening or whatever. But we're just doing our own thing and hanging out together. Chad, where? Melanie, so we're at my apartment. We have been sleeping there. Lori, Chad did find a really cute house in Rexburg, so maybe you would want to move. Melanie, I was thinking about moving, but I feel that we're fine. Kinda like, what can they do? The next segment, Melanie. Well, they said they're not going to stop until they get what they want, so I don't know. Chad, you probably need to get out of there. Not rush out of there, but they won't leave you alone. The network is pretty deep, and they're going to see you as a target, since you're the only one that they can find at the moment. For your own sake, for your own sanity. We know you were meant to be there, and you found Ian, but now it's time to move away. Melanie, but his kids are in Rexburg, and Natalie. Natalie is Ian's ex-wife. Chad, I know, you don't have to move super far away. Melanie, just a different city? Chad, yeah, Madison County is a cursed place. I'm not saying you've got to decide tonight. Melanie, well, if it is going to be just a couple of weeks, we could do an Airbnb and stay in Idaho Falls somewhere. I mean, Ian works there, and that's close enough so we can go pick up the kids and they wouldn't even know we're not in Rexburg. But do you feel like a whole physical change of address, moving everything to a new place, is what will be best? Chad, yeah, because I don't think they'll leave you alone. Melanie, like the Saints in Missouri, I just keep moving and can't find a safe place. How do you get Hermosillo to stop? He's just raged with the whole thing. He wouldn't stop. He was just pacing, yelling at me and saying he wouldn't stop for anything. How do you resolve that? Chad, you get out of it. Hermosillo isn't going anywhere, and you need to leave. The wicked stay in one place, and the righteous flee. It's not the whole community. It's you. Get on Zillow and just investigate it a little bit. Melanie, I saw a cute little house for sale in Ashton. Idaho Falls would probably be better, But isn't Rexburg the place of safety when all the things happen? Chad. Yeah, but there's been lots of prophecies about major turmoil there. The plague's going to sweep through Rexburg, civil unrest. I had a vision of Second East, where McDonald's is, just chaos and people starving and fighting. So there's still a stretch of bad times coming to Rexburg before the city of light. So we had to kind of pave the way, but we were told to flee. He laughs. Lori, mostly it's because of the agency of the dark, and because Lucifer can negotiate terms still to this day about eternal law. He's been allowed to do certain things that had to force us out with the police. He had no idea the police were infiltrated with such dark people in Rexburg itself proper. So, Chad, it makes sense in retrospect, but you don't think that Rexburg would be planted immediately with Cain's translated followers. But that makes sense. Lori, that's because so many of the light creations are there, and also the dark ones, but opposition in all things. So we just feel like it's time to, just because of this situation, not be there for a season. You don't have to go far, but just get out of their line of sight. For your own sanity and for Ian to be able to go to work and not feel like you're okay there by yourself. You know? Chad, there are several houses just as good as your apartment. Little houses and decent sized houses, all for about the same price. Melanie, we'll go wherever. I'll live in a dumpster with Ian. She laughs. He's so amazing. Chad, Idaho Falls is a pretty good price in terms of rentals, especially this time of year. You should be able to find a nice one. I hate to say that, but it's hounding me that you need to get out of that city. Melanie, okay. Lori, you did great. You did great, babe. We're so proud of you. Chad, oh, you're so amazing. The recording stops. The court broke for lunch. Ian Palowski returned to the stand. Another segment from the recording played. Melanie, I know, Dad. You said that I should take some money out so that Natalie wouldn't find out I had money. So I took $50,000 out. The dad she was referring to was Chad. She had also developed the habit of referring to Lori as Mom. Another segment from the recording was played. Melanie asked Lori and Chad if they could do a combined blessing for her and Ian. Lori, we don't know what Ian knows. Melanie, Ian knows everything. Ian has figured out most stuff by himself. The recording was stopped. Clarification was made to the court. Melanie meant Ian knew all about their religious beliefs, such as the light and dark, the castings, and people becoming zombies. Melanie shared it all with him, and it all originated from Chad. In the next segment, Chad gave them both a blessing. Chad, I gave Alex and Zulema the same blessing yesterday, and the angels filled the room, and I feel the same are here today. Angels and ministers. You are a powerful couple with unlimited potential, and you will be utilized by the Lord in tremendous missions of life and salvation. You will team with Mother Earth to cleanse the earth of earthquakes, moving mountains, changing rivers, and the healing hearts of mankind through your powerful testimony. The trials you are going through right now are events that you will be able to share with others who are experiencing trials in the future. You'll be able to relate to them and understand what they've been through and the persecutions that they've faced. And you will make it much easier for them to transition to accepting the gospel. I see you both all over the world through portals, helping those who need to come to Zion, raising your children, but also leaving them in the care of trusted family members because of your grace and power and importance. You will spend days and weeks at a time bringing groups to Zion. Those are wonderful promises, and I know they will come true. I bless you now on a more personal level. Melanie, you can quickly heal from your illness. In this combined group will use their healing power to strengthen you and bless you. We will reach into your physical body and extract any spiritual or physical illnesses, pains, phobias, or fears, all kinds of possible darkness that has been implanted in you. I remove it all. I sever all negative cords, and this blessing includes Ian, severing all negative cords, clearing you of weapons, and lifting curses that may have been placed upon you. Now, I just cleanse you of that darkness placed by the police station. Once again, we thank you for your valiant way and your strong, resolute devotion to the gospel and our team. What you've accomplished this week will resonate with you throughout your life and through the eternities and blessings you receive for your faithfulness and partaking in the steps you have. I bless you now by binding your hearts together, literally wrapping cords of light around them so that you cannot be separated spiritually. And even when you're apart in the physical world, you'll still feel the connection. You are a special couple who have known each other in the past and have helped each other so much already. Your union will be looked upon as a true love story of happiness and how to treat one another and be an example to thousands and even millions of how a man and a woman should respect and love each other. I bless your union and know that the Savior is standing there with us, and he is very, very pleased with your choices. I do want to include Al and Zulema in this too. What a tremendous friendship we have formed. The six of us are on the right track. I assure you of that. I give you my testimony that this is a power team. We are the genesis of the 144,000. We don't say that boastfully. It just is the beginning of a new terrestrial order. Ian, we are so grateful you're a part of it. We love you already so much. We miss you and can't wait to see you again. And we will see you again soon. It feels like we are going into different corners of the world for a short time, but changes are coming quickly. The earth will allow us to reunite and not be under the pressure of the celestial police forces. They will have greater problems to deal with, and even those who are pursuing us will have their lives. There was some inaudible gibberish. And that will open up the way for us to use our powers fully and continue to cleanse the earth and to bless it. Mother Earth loves each one of us and knows us. We will be helping her remove darkness from this world. I promise you a home in New Jerusalem. All of us will have homes there. That will be our home base as we work under the direction of the Savior. And we will have wonderful reunions there in between our missions. It will be a glorious place where the vibrations will radiate constantly. We will feel the love of the Lord tangibly. We will be beacons of light, pillars of fire. Blessings that have begun for us will continue to accelerate. I bless all of us one more time with physical strength, spiritual devotion, and emotional ability as we face these small but trying times. The trials are real, but we will overcome them. The Lord is watching over us. I leave this blessing upon us, all in the name of Jesus Christ, and fill it up into heaven. Amen. The recording stopped. Speaking of the portals, Ian said it meant that when a person reaches a certain level of ability, they are able to open a portal, step through it, and go anywhere they wish. He had never heard of portals before he got to know Lori and Chad. The cords Chad spoke of are anchors to negative and positive things that bind you to them. This was another thing he had never heard of prior to his introduction to Chad. From what he understood, spiritual weapons can attach themselves to you and wound you spiritually. Lori and Chad designated themselves as the leaders of the group that would lead the 144,000 who would bring about the second coming of Christ. By cleansing the earth, he assumed they meant ridding the planet of people who were dark and possessed. Another segment of the recording was played. Melanie and Lori were talking about Melanie Gibb needed to cut the cords from Dave. Lori said she kept having to remind Melanie that she is not a celestial being anymore. She is a terrestrial being, but Dave is not, and, quote, he's not going to be at this rate. Ian explained that Melanie Gibb had gone through the process of translation or had already completed it. Another segment played. Alex told them there was nothing left to do in Rexburg anymore. Chad, yeah, Al, you know better. Recordings were made from the day Alex died. Melanie heard Alex died earlier that day. Lori, so are you sad? What do you believe in anymore, Mel? Nothing? Melanie, I'm just sad for her. Lori, I'm so sad for her, but indistinct mumbling. Melanie, I kind of had a glimpse of that today because I was like, what's going to happen? She was like, Lori said she felt inspired to say that I had JJ. They got to talking about Melanie and Dave again and how Dave supposedly deceived Melanie, yet she wanted him so much. The quality of the audio was poor. Chad and Lori were still audible, as was Melanie Palowski. Lori said she speaks to God every night. Melanie said her phone was being tracked. Chad gave Melanie and Ian another blessing. He said Alex was on the next step of his mission. Alex was working on the other side to ensure their protection. Chad said Melanie and Ian are part of what he called the number one team. Lori assumed control of the blessing. She began to cry and parroted what Chad already said. Among other things, that they will live in New Jerusalem and that they will help many children. She said they were all warriors and cleansers whose missions are to spiritually ShamWow the world of dark energy for the Lord. My words. Ian said he was not receptive to these ideas at the time the recording was made. He made 9 recordings in all. Chad frequently offered blessings which had become commonplace. In the next segment that was played, Alex's funeral was discussed. Melanie didn't want Brandon to know Alex died because she wanted him to fear Alex for the rest of his life. Lori said Tammy was with her the other day and said how ridiculous the Rexburg PD were. She quoted Tammy on this subject after Tammy's death. Lori said Alex would handle the police from now on. Chad told Melanie to avoid the police. Melanie asked if the number they called her from was their new number. Lori confirmed it was, but that they could have just as easily gotten a new one the following day. They discussed the use of code words as a provision to prevent being found out by police listening in via wiretaps. No further questions. The court adjourned for a mid-afternoon break. Pryor cross-examined Ian Palowski. He asked him when Ian and Melanie Palowski met and married. They met through an LDS dating app on November 19th, 2019, and married on November 30th, 2019. He met Chad in person only once on November 23rd, 2019. Melanie spoke to Alex frequently. They spoke every other day on the phone or through text messages. He was asked about the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux. Ian said he didn't think Alex had Melanie's best interests in heart. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done it. Ian was under the impression that Melanie and Lori were very close. The judge asked for a sidebar with the attorneys. They left the courtroom. When they returned, the judge asked the jurors to leave the courtroom as there was an issue that needed to be dealt with. After the jury left, Judge Boyce said he had an issue with Ian's attorney being in the courtroom and asked for him to be escorted out. Boyce implied that the attorney nodded while Ian was being questioned, though Ian denied it. The jury returned. Pryor asked Ian if he knew the children were missing on November 23rd, 2019. Ian was told they were in hiding due to a custody dispute. Before Alex's death, Lori and Chad contacted Melanie and said there was going to be a powerful spiritual attack. Ian confirmed that it was common for members of the Mormon Church to give each other blessings. No further questions. Blake redirected. Ian believed that Alex tried to kill Brandon. Melanie didn't move to Rexburg until late October or early November. The children went missing in September. He was never told where the children were located. No further questions. The court broke for the day. May 7th, 2024. The first witness called to the stand was Zulema Pastenes, Alex's widow and sister-in-law to Lori and Chad. She was there when Lori and Chad first met. The attraction was obvious to her. She remembered them giggling and flirting. She also recalled Chad telling Lori that they were married in a previous life. He also told her at that time that it was their mission to gather the 144,000. They got together at another conference and returned to Lori's house later that day. Lori and Chad were outside playing basketball, and Zulema went inside as she felt like a third wheel. Chad also said he would like to go inside. Lori asked him why and asked him if he was scared of her. Chad gave Zulema a blessing. This was a different type of blessing than what is typical in the church. Chad seemed intent on making predictions about the future. He told her she was special, how many gifts she had, and what she would do in the future. Later in the day, Chad sat in the middle of the room and taught 6 or 7 women the doctrine of translation. Charles took JJ out of town so Lori could have her friends over for the weekend. The next day, Zulema bumped into Lori and Chad at the temple. They asked her not to tell anyone she had seen them there. On another occasion, they all met up at Melanie Gibbs's house. Chad asked her to go to lunch because he had some information for her. They all went together, Melanie Gibb among them, but Chad didn't tell her anything because he didn't feel she should be in the know at that time. He told her he would call her at a later date. He called her and told her he could read people's past lives, and he wanted to give her a reading. He gave her a rating of 4.2 light. He told her that when a person dies, there is a brief phase where the body is viable and could potentially be occupied by a dark spirit or demon. The original spirit, he said, goes into limbo. Chad told Lori this before he told Melanie. Lori told Melanie she and Charles were experiencing financial problems. She joined Lori and numerous other women to do a casting on Charles. They got together and they all held hands. Each one had a different role to play. Chad gave his instructions to Lori over the phone. Once it was all over, Chad proclaimed it a success. Later, they discussed the fact that although Ned was cast out, another dark spirit named Garrett took over Charles's body. Another casting was conducted at a later date. Alex was one of the participants. Lori assigned roles to the group members. Alex was designated the warrior. After a second casting of Charles, Chad told them about another dark spirit by the name of Hiplos that occupied Charles's body. It struck Zulema as odd that after the castings on Charles, Lori moved to Texas to be with him. That, after all the strife in their relationship. She asked Lori about it. Lori said she needed to sort out her financial affairs. Once Charles was murdered, Lori asked Zulema to go to her house. She told her Charles had been shot. Lori came across as somber, but Alex's demeanor was vintage as a model of insouciance. They told her Charles was angry when Lori began looking through his phone, and Charles took a baseball bat that belonged to Tylee and assaulted Alex about the head with it. She was informed that this was when Alex got his gun and killed Charles. When she asked Alex how he was doing, he said he was fine and was curious to know why she was asking. She told him it was because he shot someone. He replied with, "He was a zombie." Chad and Lori were more physically demonstrative and loving than ever. Meanwhile, Tammy was still alive. Zulema asked Chad what they were doing. He told her they had been married several times in previous incarnations. He then went on to tell her Tammy would die young. He also delved into the subject of portals. He told her he and Lori were the leader of the council that would gather the 144,000 together. He proclaimed that JJ's death was imminent. Chad said his own next incarnation would be as Colby Ryan's son. Chad gave Zulema a blessing. He said Jesus Christ wanted her to move to Rexburg. He also said she was soon to marry. Chad also blessed Alex. Alex told Zulema that Chad also advised him to move to Rexburg. He was told by Chad that he would act as a warrior who would fight off invasions from other countries. Rexburg would be a haven, and Alex would be one of the town's chief defenders. Alex did not challenge any of Chad's teachings and prophecies with critical thinking. By the end of August 2019, Lori, the children, and Alex relocated to Rexburg. When Lori was asked how they would manage financially, Lori said she would live off the $6,000 a month in benefits from Social Security. She also wasn't shy in disclosing that she would receive $1 million from a life insurance policy should anything happen to Charles. After Charles was murdered, Lori was enraged when she learned he had changed the policy to designate his sister as the beneficiary. In September, Zulema paid a visit to Alex. Later the same day, she asked Lori where Tylee was. Lori told her she had to be freed. Zulema asked her what she meant. Lori touched her face and said, "Don't ask." Before the move to Rexburg, Lori told Zulema multiple times that Tylee was possessed by a demonic entity named Hillary. She received this information from Chad. Lori said JJ was being attacked in the night by dark spirits. As they put it, the infiltration was not a success, so they attacked his service dog. Hence, Lori got rid of the dog. Following Melanie Gibbs's visit to Rexburg, she got together with Zulema. Melanie told her JJ had become a zombie. While in Rexburg, Zulema was asked to invite Chad to see her give a talk. The idea was that it was a ruse to summon Chad's presence. Chad and Lori were so close at the event, snuggling up to each other on the sofa. Chad and Lori also took a trip with Zulema and Alex. Chad and Lori rode in the back seat and were hugging and kissing along the way. Zulema received a blessing from Chad, throughout which he demanded she move to Rexburg. She didn't want to, and she wasn't dating Alex at the time, so there was little impetus for her to relocate to Rexburg. Chad gave Alex a blessing and told him all his sins were forgiven. Alex, the murderer, began to weep. The court adjourned for a mid-morning break. When Zulema took the stand again, she emphasized the point that she was not amenable to the idea of moving to Rexburg. She was gainfully employed and did not want to endanger her career prospects by moving to another town. She conveyed these concerns to Lori. Lori told her not to worry because she had enough money to support everybody. Zulema did not initially tell Melanie about Lori's offer of financial support. Some documents were admitted into evidence. Among them were a list of Chad's children. There was a list of the Cox family. Every member of this family had a rating assigned to them. Tylee and JJ were both labeled as dark. All of Chad's children were described as light. Zulema was told that Tammy was possessed and had become a zombie. Zulema was involved with a casting on Tammy on October 9th, 2019. It took place at Melanie Palowski's house. It happened the same day as the paintball gun incident. Lori got on the phone late that night, and she was remembered as being very irate and admonishing the person on the other end of the line. She called the person stupid and a moron and idiot. When she hung up, she said, "Idiot can't do anything by himself." She spoke to Alex the same night, but nothing was said about Tammy. Zulema found out about Tammy's death a week later. Lori told her Chad planned to move into her apartment after Tammy's funeral. Hence, the friend Chad said he would be moving in with in Rexburg. Lori said they needed to be together to embark on their missions. Please join me next week for part 8 of the Chad and Lori Dybell murders. Thank you for listening to Human Monsters. Bye for now.